Squid Game has finally come to an end, and a lot of opinions are shared. Some like it, some don't. But I think one thing is unanimously agreed upon, which is the VIP's performance are lackluster. They act and talk like a cartoonish villains. The script that were given to them sound like a cheap imitations of one-liner from Hollywood. And the funny thing is, in the English dub version, the VIPs were even dubbed over by voice actors.
I've done plenty of hunting in Africa, but this was on another level.
Fuck, I was the only one who didn't go.
I've done plenty of hunting in Africa, but this was on another level.
Fuck, I was the only one who didn't go?
This is not the first time audience has complained about the VIP's performance. The actor John D. Michael, the VIP of the first seasons of Squid Game, received criticism for their bad acting before. He therefore pointed out in an interview that oftentimes non-Korean performers act with dialogue that is translated by non-native, sometimes even by Google Translate, and they don't even know what is the context and the tone of their scene. And these forceful implementations of English actually also changes the dynamic of the story. If they speak in English, that means the VIPs are not well versed in Korean, which further implies a translator was needed for every game that was shown on screen. Following this line of logic, we can deduce the VIPs, the one who funded the game with billions of dollars, are somehow willing to watch players play traditional Korean games like Gonggi and Pisochigi while listening to the translators who convert 456 different opinions and strategies into a coherent idea. The VIPs, in this case, handicap themselves and walk 3 steps forward and 2 steps backward. If they know nothing about the language, wouldn't it be easier to choose games that have well-recognized game rules? Or, as Mr. Beast said it,
let's test my hypothesis. Raise your hand if you know how to play Squid Game. Exactly. That's why we're doing musical chairs instead, because we're not Korean.
Unless the traditional Korean games are unique features of the Korean Squid Games. After all, it is shown in the last episode that the Squid Game is actually happening in all around the world. But here's the catch. If you are going to organize a Squid Game in LA, US, why would you play Dakji as a recruiter? It's a game dates back to Chosun periods of Korea. Your average American should have no interest in Dakji. Not to mention, Player 1 is no longer around. It would be odd that the VIPs will still adhere to the Korean games. And the most glaring thing about the bad dialogue, the poor choice of games, and the extra step of dubbing English using English is that it can be easily avoided with a simple trick. Just let all the VIPs be Korean, or at least all the ones that we have seen so far. This way, communications between actors and writers would be easier. The lines and dialogue can also be more authentic, which potentially make the VIPs more fleshed out. I can only assume why they didn't cast Korean VIP is attributed to the reality of the current world. Most wealthy nations right now are from the West, so it would make sense for foreigners portraying the roles of billionaires who secretly run a sadistic game. Even that one Asian VIP from Season 3 is not an actress from Korea. She is from Hong Kong. But I also think it's rather conscious or unconscious casting decisions and tells how the Oriental perceives the Occidental in 21st centuries. For example, let's say there really is an American Squid Game. What do you think the game would be? Well, we do have a strong candidate from Parasite. The little boy from Parasite, who plays pretend in his household as a Native American, is potentially one of the greatest foreseeable critiques for the US Squid Game. Both Squid Game and Parasite have a lot to say about the injustice of the current economic system. So, if any Korean director wants to make reference to the start of when this injustice started, he or she can just set up a game that involves playing cowboy. These inclusions of the Native American from Parasite also give us a glimpse as to how non-Western culture, in this case Korean culture, perceives the legacy of the West. When the director Bong Joon-ho was asked what is the motive behind the little boy and the native Korean, he answered, "You see that elaborate headdresses and that teepee, but for the son and the mother, they are just fancy decorations, very surface level decorations. Kind of like that cheap t-shirts that people wear just because it is cool. They have no real understanding of the actual history and the complicated context that surrounds Native Americans. It is just reduced to decor." I think this critique on Korean consumer culture can be applied to the human subject. The rich family from Parasite exhibit foreign objects as status symbol is not that different from hiring foreigners as VIPs. The VIPs, despite lacking any interesting backstories or utility to the story, still exist because it is ingrained into the Korean culture that something foreign, especially from the West, can immediately introduce a sense of extravagance. They are mere decorations for the scene, and they do not need further complexities as characters. Hence, the terrible performance. They should only foil the scene, but not steal the scene. Another movie that portrays a similar sentiment is the movie Burning. In that movie, we first encounter the character Ben after his African trip. Through different cues, the audience can tell Ben is wealthy. And one of the most interesting ways the movie uses to show off his wealth is by having out-of-place textbook dialogue for Ben.
사람이 눈물을 흘리는 게 신기해.
The Korean that Ben speaks is a bit weird and not really natural to the Korean ears. He converses like that because Ben was raised in the US. This actually makes Steven Yeun the perfect actor for this role, because in reality, Steven Yeun himself also has a hard time speaking natural Korean. From the example above, we can see that to have a wealthy image, you always need to be Korean-esque, Korean-like, but not solely Korean. Sometimes that means having your house full of foreign decorations. Sometimes it means speak with an uncanny tone. And sometimes it means having terrible English lines as placeholder characters. Thus, the perceptions of wealth is always underpinned by a half-formed visions of the Occident. On another level, the inclusions of VIPs also showcases a sneak peek at how the Korean entertainment industry grapple with its identity in the globalized world. To illustrate what I mean, let us do a small experiment. What pops into your mind when I say pop music? Is it this or this? Google Image likes to think this is the answer. We always say that music is the universal language of mankind. But when I search pop music on Wikipedia, 7 out of the 8 images are Western singers. This elucidates the problem that K-pop music has to face is the K in K-pop. With a population of roughly 50 million in Korea, the industry needs to explore other markets for revenue growth. Therefore, it is very common to see English lyrics in K-pop songs. There's a need to attract a worldwide demographic with a catchy sound. But problem arises when some K-pop songs start to have too much English. Major songs are released solely with English lyrics to cater to the wider audience, which ironically leaves out the original audience from the Korean market. And this topic of language has always been a struggle in various ways.
자막, 서브타이틀의 장벽을 한 1인치 정도 되는 그 장벽을 뛰어넘으면 여러분들이 훨씬 더 많은 영화를 즐길 수 있습니다.
Squid Game being the first K-drama to hit the global audience, it became the Gangnam Style of K-drama. And just like its counterpart, it retains its versions of English lyrics for 5% of the song. Sadly though, the similarity doesn't just end there. The problem that K-drama has to face is also the K in K-drama. Looking back on the show, which part screams Korean the most? Some of the famous soundtracks that it uses are from the West. The costumes that characters wear are not traditional Korean clothing. And the central core idea that it wants to critique, the economic system and the voting mechanism, are also historical legacy from the outside world. The only thing that vehemently screams Korea is the Korean games. You might even say it is the Squid Game. One could argue that at least they are speaking Korean. But would this be the case if the next season is in the US? The reason why the US recruiter plays Dakji is not because Squid Game started from Korea, but because Korean games have become the only thing that can signal this is Korea. But quite frankly, people don't understand the rules of Squid Game even after watching season 1. And voting is hardly speaking a children's game, let alone the Squid Game. So, what will be the point of keep calling it a Squid Game if the game will no longer be played and no longer be Korean?